All right, cool. We are now live. Awesome. So, tried to do this as a cold intro. We had a little chit chat prior to this, but this is our first ever podcast with a guest. So, Chris, this is hopefully a big honor for you being on the Collective podcast as the first ever guest here.
Yeah, feels good. It's a little nerve wracking though.
We like to keep it very conversational here, very very laid back. I think I was just mentioning to you before when I initially reached out. Steve and I just partnered on this, honestly, to get clips for social. It was like this would be a great opportunity to do that, but just to stay up to date on like anything that's going on in the industry and bring people like yourself into these conversations. So yeah, I don't know. I think obviously here where we wanted to start is this whole like GA4 attribution project, but yeah, I was mentioning to Steve before this. We used to work together pretty closely at Sear, and I remember I forget the account name off the top of my head, but we went through like the entire account restructure process. And dude, I've
hmm
pulled so many pieces from that playbook on accounts in the future that have like panned out really nicely for me. So much appreciated.
Yeah, couldn't have done that project without you. You left before you saw the results, but the results were through the roof for that. It was that hospital in Texas, and
Yep.
couldn't have been more thrilled with it. And I've gone back to that playbook a couple of times myself since.
We literally like Steve, we completely like restructured this entire account. Really solid like ad spend. Like I forget exactly how much, but
hmm
I don't know, probably around 50K in that general range, maybe a bit more. Massive account. We literally just
Nice.
restructured the entire thing. And I was newer. This was like, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. But dude,
hmm
I even remember like we like launched campaigns with smart bidding. I was like so nervous for that, and just like the little things along the way there.
Yeah, we really leaned into Google saying we should do this. Whatever, let's just do it. Let's just do what they say and see what happens. And it worked out at least in that instance.
That's
That's
so
funny.
funny.
Right before we hit play on this, and before you joined, I was joking around with Trevor. There's a saying that I've been working on the last like 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer, but just learn by doing. Like I'd rather
hmm
fail like right in my face, but at least I know what happened rather than not try it. So you guys are right in the same mindset as me. So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this was really timely. So let's I guess maybe we could like start with this general topic of GA4. And Steve, what did you say before that we started this conversation? Like this might be like one of the like most important topics that nobody's talking about because I feel like most people
Most,
don't even know this even happening.
yeah, I for sure. When I stumbled upon it, I don't know, like a month and a half ago. I was like, Trevor, did you hear about? Did you see this? You got to see this crazy shit. The data's changing when I'm going in and moving things around. I'm finding things pop up here, and that was like a month and a half ago, I think. But since then, dude, I hadn't heard between just the two of us, maybe a couple other people. I don't ever hear anybody else talking about it. None of the news, any of the other podcasts I kind of listen to, or the blog posts that are out there, or other people in the industry. Like I haven't heard any of it, so I just think it's super underrated. I'm awesome, Chris, that you wrote about this. You're aware about it and just bringing awareness because I think it's huge. It's really big in my world. I feel
So
like.
let's like kind of frame this, and then Chris, maybe you can go into a little bit more detail here. So essentially like what we're talking about is
Sure.
like, I don't know, GA4 attribution, if you will, and like testing, toggling between different attribution models. Um, Came across your post that you shared to Workshop Digital there, and that's really how I kind of came across that. So actually, we don't have the most organized podcast here. Why don't you give everybody an insight into like your job title, what you kind of do, and then maybe like how you stumbled upon this initial like GA4 attribution stuff?
Sure. I am the director of the Small Business Solutions department at Workshop Digital. It's a newer department that we've spun up to give better care and right size service to our smaller and medium sized businesses that need SEO and paid media services, paid search specifically. But outside of that, I still have my hands in some client management and being a little bit closer to clients that team members are managing, and uh, really it was just digging into trying to understand why when I pull a number from one place and import it into another place, those numbers don't look the same, even close to the same. Like, we're used to numbers being a little bit different between GA and Google Ads, going back even to the Universal Analytics days. But they were always within like 10, 20% at the most off. But, I was seeing numbers that were like 78% different, importing from GA4 into Google Ads. And that's what kind of like sent me down this rabbit hole of trying to understand a little bit better about why that's happening.
Interesting. So, I guess you guys kind of see like, hey, this conversion data from Google Ads to GA4 to maybe some historical reports, like not even close there. So like, I guess, could you frame what you then did next and how you started poking around with, like, I guess, Google signals and started toggling between some of like these different, I don't even know what you would call it, between like observed, device based, like those reporting identities, I guess,
Yeah.
essentially is what it is.
Yeah, and you had mentioned attribution models before, but like people are used to attribution models. The reporting identity seemed to be something completely different. That is a new concept to people. It was new to me and my coworkers as we started digging into it. But what kind of got us to hone in on that was we had found an article that had indicated if you have a little yellow triangle in your reports, that means that you're getting this thresholding applied, which basically says that certain certain lines of data essentially are too specific or too low, that Google's basically just anonymizing it and either excluding it completely from being displayed, or it's like rolling it under like an other or something like that. And that was like kind of our trigger point of like, okay, so maybe the issue um, between the difference in the numbers that we're seeing is that GA4 is hiding some of the data because of this thresholding.
Yep.
And so we found this article that said, like, all right, if you want to get out of thresholding, what you could do is go mess around with the reporting identity. And by choosing a more simplified reporting identity, thresholding will stop happening. And it did. It stopped happening, but that uncovered a much larger problem, which was not only was data not being displayed, but because of the modeling that goes with the more sophisticated reporting identities, conversions and users and sessions that should have been attributed to search and organic specifically were getting lumped in with direct by a lot. And in the article, kind of outlines that. But that really just kind of like made us question everything about what data do we believe? How good are these models that they're using, and how do we explain to a client, like, yeah, you're looking at it one way and it says search is not doing well, but if you tweak a setting and you look at it this other way, search is doing great. So it's hard to kind of parse that out right now.
I'm almost thinking that Google had like the best intentions, even though I don't trust Google at all, but maybe they had the best intentions to say, hey, we're going to put signals, we're going to have the best attribution modeling, it's going to be great. But then, I don't know, majority of the clients using those, using that platform under the free account, they're not super sophisticated. They're maybe don't get like the crazy amount of traffic that then these those Google signals would really apply to. Um, that's kind of where I was thinking, but it's like they haven't corrected the issue for most individuals. I remember even like the Google Universal used to do thresholding to a certain extent. Like if you had a really large website, I remember I worked on a local newspaper site out here in San Diego, like consulting on like their news division, which was kind of wild watching a whole news corporation die. But looking at their analytics, they're getting millions of visitors in a month. The lowest value that a visitor would get to is like 2, maybe it was 10 actually. So it looks like, oh, they're getting the minimal value of 10, but it was the thresholding and sampling that they were doing on that side. So it just kind of gets translated in this GA4 where this is happening, and like we've talked about, no one knows about it. I'm curious, like what cued you off to look into, like to find that article? Like I'm just like you just doing some googling, you're like, dude, something's wrong here, and you just came across it.
I can actually I can attribute that to our analytics person who saw that some accounts had that thresholding and found that solution for the thresholding. So when I saw that we were having the thresholding, like that's what like triggered me to like go to that article. But like truly, like thresholding wasn't the problem. It was the reporting identity. Thresholding was just a symptom of the reporting identity. Um, it's kind of the modeling that they're doing, which I went down a rabbit hole today about that as well. Is like there's actually two different kinds of modeling that Google is employing here. One they call behavioral, which affects user and session based data and is most seen in like the traffic acquisition reports. But then they're also doing conversion modeling, which only appears like in the conversion report section and a couple of other areas as well. The behavioral one you can affect by playing with that reporting identity. It seems like the conversion based modeling you can't affect at all. That's just part of GA4. And so like if you go into the traffic acquisition report, put all your filters on to look at, just, the specific conversion that you want to look at whatever channel or medium or whatever you want to look at, and then go do the same exact thing in the conversions report, you're going to get two different numbers. So even within GA4, all things being the same, which number can you trust? Which number do you use when you're making recommendations to your client to invest more in search or invest more in SEO or social? I don't have an answer for that yet. I'm
That's
still
such a
trying to figure that out.
nightmare. It's such a nightmare because I feel like a lot of clients, I mean, I can't necessarily say like a lot of clients don't trust reporting, but like I think there's a good group of people who are a little bit skeptical of reporting and trying to match like, hey, like our CRM showing this, your analytics is showing this. This just throws like an entirely new wrench into this whole equation of working with clients to try and be like, hey, like we got data, we track things, we're making data backed and data informed decisions. This is like a whole nother ball game here where it's like that client conversation and expectation setting is so much more complicated now.
Yeah, and I think, Steve, I think your point is correct. I think Google has the best of intentions in mind. I think they're making their move to be ready for the totally cookieless world. I mean, it's all about like the privacy focused browsers and people who aren't accepting cookies, like when the little banner pops up. Maybe it's a little too soon to be like kind of like relying on that as much, but they are, I think, trying to fill in the blanks, and fill those holes while we still have data to work with by doing these models. But I don't think that we as agencies and clients in general are ready to kind of be thinking about, conversions and traffic in a more abstract way or directional way than we've been used to for all these years.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because, Trevor, to your point, the expectations that clients are going to have of reporting, I mean, let's be honest here. Most of the time, well, there's a big part of client relationships that are beyond just performance, but performance is a huge part of it, right? And being able to tell that story, be good or bad, right? That if we don't have that ability to do so and not be able to tell that story to clients, it's going to be hard from a retention standpoint to share that and keep them on board of like, hey, this is what we're doing. So I think maybe part of that conversation now is going to have to be this with clients explaining this is the scenario that we're in. This is the best that we got from a reporting standpoint. Maybe you're going to have to start looking at like the first party data from like, if it's, within their Shopify store or, whatever first party data you can pull, but that's going to be a big part of like trying to keep that relationship and retention as, with clients is just explaining this to them that we don't have all the data here.
How did the client take your guys' conversation there, Chris? Like when because it sounds like you floated this up to the client. Just be curious, like how that went. Just I'm assuming pretty transparent of like, hey, this is what we found. We don't have all the answers, but be curious like what their initial feedback or thoughts were.
Pretty much exactly that. I mean, we were having conversations with the client where they were saying like, oh, look, paid isn't contributing as much as it should be, for the investment that we're having. And that was when we were on the blended reporting identity that was kind of like robbing our search from the credit that it should have been getting. And And so, we went in and did the digging. We talked with them all along the way and said, like, listen, here's a setting that we found. Here's our understanding of how it works. Here's what we're going to do to test it. And fortunately, with the reporting identity, it's a simple toggle. You could turn it one way, look at the data, turn it back the other way, look at the data, compare it. There's no impact to doing that to your data. And so once we did that and we showed that to the client, we showed them the difference. We showed them how much closer it is to UA, which was actually still collecting data, as well as to the old school. They had installed a conversion tag like from Google Ads like
Nice.
5 years ago, and how close it was getting to that too. So we had two other sets of data that we could use to corroborate the story of like GA4 is a little bit closer to reality, or at least reality as we understood it before, if we do it this way. And the client was open to hearing it, and we've left the setting to the reporting base or the device-based reporting identity ever since. And like that's been the way that we've been going forward, and we've been able to have more positive conversations and I think realistic conversations about our performance since doing that.
Realistic conversations about performance. Yeah, I think that's the right way of looking at it. I do have a question on that side. So, you know, for my experience, typically we'll create the conversions within Google and then import them into Google Ads, just so things are kind of consistent. We're all on the same page. What's a conversion? I don't have an answer for this. Maybe you do, or still to be determined. If you toggle between, let's say, device-based or blended, and will those conversions be impacted when they're imported into Google Ads? If one's showing more in one sector versus another, and by toggling the view, it toggles the import in, or maybe is it in Google Ads, they only look at, I don't know, blended. How do they what's the import setting in? Like, what is it under?
That's a great question.
I don't know.
That is a very good question. A tough one to answer. It's something that we thought about as well, and we did look at it. Our initial kind of test of it, or not test, but analysis of it, it seemed to indicate that the imported number didn't change when we toggled back and forth between the reporting identity, but there's definitely a big delay. So when we looked at it initially, there was a huge difference between what was displayed in GA4 and what was displayed in the imported number in Google Ads. But then we gave it some time, like a week or so, and then when we went back and looked at that same initial time period, it was a lot closer. So I don't have a solid answer for you on that one, Steve, but there could definitely be something a little tricky going on there too.
So the reason I ask is because when I'm setting up conversions for a site that has a lot of traffic that's having the thresholding happening, and some of those conversions, maybe they're only happening a handful of times. If I have it on blended, those events will not come in for me to toggle into a conversion. The moment I switch it to device, they appear. And so then I can toggle them on as a conversion only after I click on device-based. Then they get converted into a conversion. They will continue to show up under conversions. I'm not sure if it's at that point, if I switched it back to blended, if you're still following me here, if the conversions still came in as the device-based amount. And then if you have to import them into Google Ads, how does that all affect it? But I found so many times all these little small hidden conversions when I'm setting them up, they're just hidden there because I'm just waiting for them to show up so I can toggle them in. I'm like, where are they? That was what triggered me into this whole venture of like, well, where's just my event data? That's where that got me started in this whole realm of this issue.
That's an interesting one. I hadn't heard that being an issue, but I'm going to take that back to my team for sure because I'm positive that there's probably some of that going on as well.
Yeah, if you can't find the events that you've created, they're hidden there, and they will show up consistently, even if it's only like one. Like I had like a random form that no one ever signs out, and it's like a website that gets like 20,000 visits, but like it's a form that maybe gets filled out 3 or 4 times. The only way that you can set up that event to show up is if they see it under device based. So they're hidden there. So yeah, bring it back to your teams and find your conversions. But yeah, then it comes back to the importing back into Google Ads. Are they there? It makes me think that I don't know if I want to import my conversions from Google Ads into the platform and just have to go. It's a pain in the ass though. It's like
Like
more work on the end.
you mean GA4? Like this is now like considering, hey, maybe we do it the I wouldn't say like old fashioned way, but like instead of importing GA4 conversions, you're just building out conversion actions in Google Ads.
Yeah, and report off that platform from a conversion standpoint. Because I've had similar conversations like with the client, they're doing multiple ad platforms. Let's say Facebook, let's say Google Ads and Bing Ads, right? And then where is the central place that you're reporting your conversions from? You'd love to be at one spot like Google Ads, and it all kind of comes in nicely and tells that story, especially if it's doing all the cross-device tracking, etc. But I found it best that you have to report within platform just because of different attribution models. This specific reason could be an argument for it to where it's like, yeah, I get it. If I total up all my conversions specifically within platform, it's going to equal more than you have. But I think it's a better way to decide of like what's working or not, and not solely relying as Google Analytics as that central place of truth. I guess I would say, and individual platforms are going to be cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's just so annoying because it's like GA4 analytics, a huge part of the pitch to clients to set up a GA4 property is like it's a one-stop shop for reporting. Everything's in one location. So now it's like now you got to go back and say, well, maybe that's not the case here. It's like so, but I do think that's a really good call there of any type of like conversion reporting and tracking is to maybe just have like both actions in the account, a GA4 action and then a Google Ads action or whatever the platform might be. I think the tricky thing there would be, if campaigns are optimizing for like both of those are set to primary, what gets prioritized within smart bidding? How do those campaigns optimize? Like, do you leave one on secondary, one on primary? I feel like there's not a great clean like solution here at this point.
It's probably not going to be one size fits all. Um, I do think that there's some merit there to setting up both so that you have both to compare to one another. And like, maybe in Google Ads, you set the in-platform one to primary and let it optimize based off of that, and the other one's just there as an FYI in case something breaks. But this kind of goes back to something I was saying a little bit earlier too, and something I've been kind of thinking about for a couple of years now is, we're very used to thinking of conversions as like one to a customer. Somebody fills out your lead form, that lead form is, or that conversion is a lead form, but maybe we need to be a little bit more abstract about it, especially, like I said, we're in an in-between phase now where cookies are still a thing for a good portion of our, audience, but they are shrinking and, it's getting more and more to the privacy focus. So thinking more abstractly and directionally and, understanding that a client might need 500 conversions in a month or 500 signups in a month, that doesn't necessarily mean 500 conversions, as
Yeah.
far as you measure it. There might be, you might have to think about conversions in a different kind of way than we're used to thinking about them.
So like maybe how so? Because I think we've talked about this topic a handful of times on this podcast here, or maybe kind of like hinted at it. But I'd be curious to maybe double click on that point a little bit. Like when you say think about conversions a bit differently and thinking about attribution a bit differently, like how does that? What do you mean by that, and how does that kind of play out with clients? Like, are we saying form fills we might not put as much weight on those as we once did, or we're looking at bottom of like actual closed deal in CRM? Like, what's kind of like the shift there? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
The way that I've been thinking about it, and like I said, I've been thinking about it for a little while now. I haven't necessarily put it into practice because I don't think it's fully baked yet. But Google's been telling us for a few years now, I think, that we really should be relying on our first party data a lot more. So I think when it comes to measuring success and reporting back to the client, having clients with a bit more of sophistication on their back end that, we can pull sales directly out of their CRM or pull leads directly out of their, mailing list or whatever. I think that's the direction that we should be moving in to report on success. Whereas on the conversion side, starting to think about those more as just methods for propelling the bidding algorithms and training the bidding algorithms to get a little bit smarter. Because, like I said, 500 conversions might not necessarily equal 500 new users. It might be 500 conversions equals 300 new users, just because of the way the attribution is happening, and who's getting the credit for what action users are taking. So that's what I'm thinking in terms of thinking about conversions a little bit differently, and redefining it as that a conversion isn't necessarily a sale. It's not necessarily a sign up. It's an action that kind of indicates that these things are happening within a given channel or a given platform. But I don't think we can look at it as a one-to-one anymore. I think we're going to need that internal back-end data for that.
Yeah, it's almost like you're saying, I don't know, I mean, for lack of a better word, like the conversions that we set up now within platforms, they're more signals that we need to use that will then eventually drive a customer in. And the first party data should be able to tell us, hopefully, maybe a story of where they came from. Yeah.
I think that's good context there.
That's
That's a good framing.
Yeah, 100%, because it's just telling the story of the conversions, the one-to-one. It's as advanced as digital marketing has become in the cookieless future. It's going to be still like you're driving on the I-8 freeway and you have a billboard up, and what's your return on that billboard? It's kind of, we're getting to that point where we might not have that visibility, and just having those conversations with clients. Why? Because I still think, I mean, we've been all doing this a long time. People that come on, they're like, oh, you guys can track everything back to, what they ate for breakfast and then what they signed up on my form, and converted. It's just not that simple. Yeah.
So it sounds
100%.
like moving forward, like there's no clean solution here for this issue, and teams might have to consider, having a GA4 conversion built out, but then also in-platform conversions built out, and seeing what that data looks like, and then ultimately having client CRM or sales data be like the ultimate measure of like, hey, this stuff's working versus this stuff's not working, and we'll kind of see how this plays out.
I think so, and I think
there's one. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
We were doing so well. No, I agree with that, and I think that we'll probably see the proliferation of some more, platforms, more software, maybe more sophisticated CRMs that will inherently be able to kind of like make those connections and show those user journeys and pathways as we kind of move more forward into the cookieless world.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. Maybe there's a layer of AI that's going to get thrown on this that'll actually work to maybe help out, that we get to get transparency on. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah, the only thing I was going to throw out there is just a quick tip. I was just thinking about it. I've screwed this up on a client's account, so someone else is probably going to do this too. So I might as well mention it. If you're creating events within Google Analytics 4, your event name can be pretty long. But when you're creating a conversion, there's a character limit of 40. So just make sure that your events name are under 40. Otherwise, when you try to turn them on as conversions, they'll never show up as a conversion at all. Like you'll toggle them on, but they'll not fire through. It just stops. So it's like 40 character limits on events that you then turn into conversions. So just small one. But I screwed that.
Good pro tip there.
Interesting.
All right. I do have one other topic, or do have one other question on this topic before moving off. And I think it would help just for general context here, and even for myself to explain it, would be, we spoke about like if you enable Google Signals and you're using like the default reporting ID within Google Analytics 4, basically what that is doing is that is like some type of like anonymized aggregate data that Google's collecting in response to all these privacy concerns. So essentially like Signals is trying to pair different devices who they might not have like a Gmail login or the ability to track cookies on that. So it's Google's kind of like response to privacy concerns or issues. And some of that data is going to be, I guess, like modeled. Whereas if you toggle back to device-based reporting identity, that's more cookie tracking, how things were tracked in Universal Analytics, and historically. Am I following that properly?
That's the way that I understand it. Yeah.
Got it.
I concur.
Cool. All right, cool. I'm just making sure like I follow that because that's the impression that I was under, and I think that could help give some context as to like why stuff looks differently.
The cookieless future looks
Anything,
fantastic.
dude, I can only imagine. But I think to Chris's point there, I feel like this like has a huge opportunity for some business, like some type of software reporting platform. There's some type of opportunity here where I'm sure there's going to be other services that stand up for reporting and attribution. There's got to be. Cool. All right,
Yeah,
let's
I don't know what those are just yet, if there are out there, but
Yeah.
I'd be excited to see what people come out with.
Steve mentioned something about like, I don't know, maybe there might be like an AI solution. I'd be curious, Chris, if you and the team there at Workshop, have you guys been doing anything with AI? Have you guys been testing it? Do you use AI at all in your day to day? General thoughts and takes, like just anything that comes to mind there. I'd be curious how you use it or how the team has been like testing it and implementing it, if at all.
Yeah, great question. I would say we're still in the early stages of adopting, AI, outside of like what Google has like built into their, their platform. But many of us have been testing ChatGPT to help us like writing ad copy, landing page copy, things like that. Um, and there has been a large push at our one of the founders of the company is leading a push into more exploration of AI tools. So we've got a small team now that's specifically tasked with testing tools, seeing how we can deploy them in our day to day, and kind of make them more universally adopted around the agency. I can tell you that on the small business side of things, since we are dealing with limited hours and limited resources, we are looking for more ways that we can lean into automation and lean into AI tools to kind of help us make the most of those hours and make 6 hours feel more like 12 hours of work, based off of being able to leverage some of these tools. So it's definitely on the forefront of our minds, but we are still in the very early stages.
Yeah, I uh, I completely agree there. Um, I feel like a lot of these use cases and platforms, it seems to be very early days, and a lot of people still just trying to like
Hmm.
rig some stuff together. Like Steve, I remember the SEO tool that you built there using AI, where it would like scrape SEM Rush and like a couple other places to help you write like title tags and meta descriptions, stuff like that. I thought that was kind of interesting there, where it seems like a lot of teams are still kind of in very early innings there.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that we're doing with any of the AI stuff, it's mostly content based, right? Be it ad copy, title tags, meta
Hmm.
descriptions, etc. The tool that I built, I mean, it's off of Sheets AI, where it pulls in the API for ChatGPT to come in. I feed it with some extra data, like scraping the site, give me the SEMrush keywords, manually override of keywords I wanted to influence on the decision of, hey, create me a title tag or meta description, an H1 tag, or a blip of content for like e-commerce content. So it helps kind of scale it, but you also have to kind of, it gets you maybe 70% of the way there to modify, but it's purely based on content. I have dabbled with screwing around with throwing in some client data for like reporting, where I'm just like, I'm thinking I'm seeing this trend line here of data. It's pretty raw import into ChatGPT. Like, can you confirm this? And I'm not being biased, and just see what it comes back. And it's been pretty good as far as like, yeah, no, there is a trend that we're seeing here, based on the data. That's been kind of cool. So I think maybe the reporting side can really help scale things once we get there, to tell that story, because I know reporting is always a challenge with clients. Being able to do that at scale, maybe that's something where we can come into play. But like production work, it's mostly content, driven items that I've seen.
will say the other side of it that I've been seeing, that I've used it for, and then a colleague of mine, Michael, has used it for, is to help code tools. So
Mhm.
while the AI itself isn't powering the tool, it is helping to build the tool. And so he's been able to build some cool stuff for our SEO team, um, that ChatGPT has helped him to write the Python code required to make it work. So in a way, like, that's having an indirect influence on the work that we do. Um, but that's the other way that I've been seeing it used as well, is writing code to build better, like, customized tools.
Yeah, 100%. I saw some story that I can't pull any examples of websites, but the websites that would help you with the coding examples, right? And you'd search for it on Google and you go to their website and you kind of figure out, okay, and piece it together. I heard like
Hmm.
their traffic was down like 30 or 40% since
Oh, wow.
December, which
Oh
makes a lot of
boy.
sense. I've used it. Yeah, it's a good point. I use it like even on like the Google Tag Manager side when I'm trying to develop some tracking for a certain element on a page and I just need them to help me with the CSS selector and
Hmm.
it'll just do it for me after I put the code in. So yeah, I think there are some of those other ways that it's this helping out too on the programming side. I think it's huge.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I've seen a couple I've seen a couple use cases there on the programming side, and it sounds like I don't know anything about programming, but it sounds like it really helps just the overall output and help like programmers kind of get started. Still, obviously, need like a little bit of experience and insight into like how to then manipulate the code a little bit further. But that's really interesting. How about on like the I don't know, kind of like more automation side of things and platforms like Performance Max, Advantage Plus. Have you and the team been testing out any, I don't know, any new campaign types or anything along those lines? I feel like Advantage Plus and Performance Max are the two newer ones that come to mind that I've seen some really good performance from, but don't know if you guys are testing those or anything else that's like a little newer on the paid side of things.
Yeah, we're definitely, as a team, been testing out a lot more Performance Max. I can't speak to Advantage Plus, but Performance Max for sure. And the results have been hit or miss. More hit with e-commerce clients,
Yes.
mostly miss with lead generation clients, but we keep kind of trying. Um, it's kind of a mixed bag, because you'll launch Performance Max, actually for the same client that I wrote the blog about. And Performance Max was doing great when we first took over the account, but then as we started to build a more sophisticated account and we wanted the brand traffic to go to brand and not to Performance Max, we were able to get our Google rep to, on the back end, negate the brand traffic. And then once that happened, like, Performance Max took a dive, brand got better. So there are, use cases, but I think your mileage is going to vary as, we kind of get used to it.
It seems like
Yeah, the
it
brand
seems like
traffic stuff is yeah, I was just going to say, Trevor, on the lead gen side, the brand traffic is where we've seen the PMax campaigns just struggle. And yeah, same use case I've seen across the board. I have seen some success with some very hyper local, simple services where PMax makes sense. It's almost like they're automated campaigns from that they run, or whatever they call the simplified campaigns. But there's still brand in there for sure. That's capitalizing on it. But if they don't have a huge search presence, a lot of it is unbranded traffic that's coming in. But it's like a super simple service, and it's like B2C. I don't think a B2B campaign lead gen with PMax. I think that's going to struggle regardless. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like anything like shopping, e-commerce, PMax is going to be your friend. When it comes to lead gen, you got to be very careful with that. And I do find that so crazy how I think it might have changed now where you could negate brand, but I know for a long period of time you had to like actually contact the Google rep to do that for you. That seems just like so crazy to me, and maybe that just alluded to Google knows, hey, lead gen wise, we got to keep brand coming in here because if we don't, we really struggle with Performance Max on the brand side of things or on the non-brand side of things.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
All right,
Yeah,
I
the one
got
thing on the PMax though, like e-commerce, real quick on the PMax e-commerce side of
yeah,
things. I mean, PMax had to replace the shopping campaigns, right? Like they
yep.
made that as a requirement that all shopping campaigns are run through PMax. So it's like maybe it's not that great. It's just a shopping campaign. It just has the name of PMax associated with it. Potentially, I don't know. Just playing devil's advocate on that one.
I could totally
They're
see
gonna name it to Shopping Plus in a couple of years, I'm sure.
that.
Well, then we know if it's Shopping Plus or PMax, and then we really know if PMax really works. Uh,
we we've talked a bunch on this podcast about like some like zero click content, zero click social content, creating content for in feed consumption on social platforms. Honestly, a big reason why we started this podcast is just to try and like have some topics, bring in guests like yourself who are experts, and then have some good clips for social. So then we could use those for our brand, for for our agencies to try and generate some business there. It seems like that is a trend that I don't know if you call it the industry, but just like business generation through like digital products is heading is just constant content creation for in feed consumption. I'd be curious, Chris, if you guys are doing any of that over at Workshop, or if just you personally, like, is there any stuff like that that you've been thinking about in digital marketing? It sounds like conversion and attribution, how you might value conversions on client accounts would be an example, but like, I don't know, any thoughts to zero click or like anything that comes to mind for some stuff in the industry that you feel like is kind of shifting or needs to?
It's a good question. I know that for us as an agency, we are starting to put more focus on our social presence and uh, getting our brand out there more through content creation, videos. We're talking about doing a podcast ourselves. Um, so I agree that like sort of it's almost like kind of going back to a brand building and just building awareness more than necessarily driving like the traffic to the website that's going to fill out your form, um, and looking at it like through those individual channel lenses. It might be becoming more holistic as we kind of progress here.
yeah, I'm really curious too on the agency side of things, and doing more blogging, more content, more video itself. But is it? I don't know if there's a best answer, good answer for this one, but as far as what is going to provide more value or impact is promoting the brand of the agency or the brand of the employees. Because I know personally back in the day when I had to like be required to write blog posts for the company, I don't know if I was super into it, to be honest. Because
Hmm.
like, hey, cool, I get up promoting this, but it's not really doing anything for myself. Sure, I could share it on the social stuff, but it's like I don't really own it. It's kind of like at least out
Hmm.
my idea. So I'm just always kind of playing a little devil's advocate on there too. Is like, and even from an impact from someone signing up with an agency, is it the agency that they need to see at the brand? Maybe sometimes, or is it the individuals that are working there and showing thought leadership? That's a concept that I'm constantly kind of battling uh, in my head.
Our our approach is trying to highlight more of the employee, I think, thought leadership, because um, when somebody reads something written by one of our analysts, and there's a chance that they are going to get that analyst or somebody like them. I think that's um, I think that builds a better case for signing on with a company or a consultant if you're able to see like, okay, it's not just this nameless nebulous person that's generating this idea. It's like a specific person. It's an analyst that's employed there. It's got a title. I could see their LinkedIn. They're real, and I think that that kind of helps build a better relationship from the start, which relationships is what all of this is about. Decent performance with a really good relationship, I think, could be stronger between an agency and a client than really good performance but a relationship that doesn't it is not rooted in anything.
Yeah,
We've talked about that plenty. We've talked about that plenty of times. Is like it seems like clients. It's not necessarily. It seems like it's the absolute case. Clients just want to work with somebody who they know is an expert and is confident in what they do, and they have a good working relationship.
Hmm.
Performance, to your point, like sure you got to have some performance, but at the end of the day, that relationship and that rapport and that confidence that exudes on calls and that is seems to be much more important. And I think that's really interesting. We also had a spotlight on I forget his name now, but he's I think a founder of Byword, I want to say the little SEO product is, but essentially he put out like a little carousel post that I came across that went viral. It had so many comments, so many likes, huge reach, and it was just kind of like how we I don't know, like how we stole 3 million monthly or yearly visits from a competitor using AI.
Hmm.
It had like a real catchy title, and you start clicking through the post, and then a solution of how they did it was using their software Byword. But I'm thinking, like, if Byword put that out, I don't know who the heck is engaging with that. But if it's like, hey, I did this, this is my tool, like, let me show you how I did this, and oh, by the way, I'm subtly putting my brand or my service in there, that seems to have way more likelihood of success as opposed to Byword or whatever the brand name is putting that out on LinkedIn. Like, I don't think they would generate a lot of engagement, whereas an actual individual person without question would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there are some brands that are known for like educational content that it would be fine, like the Moz of the world. They're kind of known for that, so it gives that street cred of knowledge. But yeah, if it's just for the company, like you kind of smell it out, like this is a selling tactic. You're doing this to get someone coming in, and I don't think people want that. They just want the good information, and no, they're not trying to be like pitched. Like just they're just trying to help out. If you're just trying to help out, you seem to do better.
Totally. Well, cool. Chris, anything else that you want to mention there? Also, before we close, would like you to share, obviously, like Workshop Digital, where people can find you and Workshop. But like, I don't know, anything else that you want to mention here? Any other topics you want to surface? Otherwise, where can people find you and Workshop Digital?
Sure. Yeah, no other topics. I think that this topic is still ripe for mining. There's still more digging that we need to do to figure out exactly what's going on and, you know, start to settle into where we're going to bring ourselves and our clients. So I'll keep you guys posted and keep an eye out for, additional
Awesome.
blog posts. For me, Workshop Digital, workshopdigital.com. We're a full service SEO, paid analytics agency. Um, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Christopher LaRoche. That's me.
Very nice. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on here. I messaged you on LinkedIn the other day, immediately responded, was down to hop on the podcast here, and you're the first ever collective guest on the podcast here. So this is a first in hopefully multiple conversations in the future here.
Yeah, it was a big honor. Thanks for reaching out.
Absolutely.
Right on.
Alrighty,
Well,
guys.
it's nice to meet you, Chris. Appreciate the time you took today. It's been awesome. I
Yeah.
just love being able to record a conversation of like-minded people. I think it just it's helpful for even myself if this is all it comes out of. So this is cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was very nice to meet you as well. We're neighbors. You live a couple of cities down from me, so we should get together
Okay,
sometime.
cool. Yeah, no, for sure. I like it. We'll have to get Trevor out this way too.
I would love to, because Philadelphia is not prime weather out here, and I would love to get out to where you guys are located.
Yeah,
All right, we'll
San
make it
Diego's
happen.
nice, man.
That's a
All right.
good note to end it on there.
I think we are good here.